It's Long-Term Care Awareness Month. So today we are talking about the challenges people have with financial planning when dealing with the costs of long-term care and how do you figure how to address it. Let's talk more on something more.
Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd is a certified financial planner practitioner and senior vice president and financial advisor at Wealth Enhancement Group, one of the nation's largest registered investment advisors. We call it Something More because we'd like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients on Cape Cod and across the country. Here's your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being with us. I'm Chris Boyd. I'm here with Jeff Perry and Russ Ball. We are all of the AMR team at Wealth Enhancement and glad to have you with us for another episode. November is Long-Term Care Awareness Month, and it's probably a good thing to have this once in a while because this is a topic nobody likes to talk about, but it can be consequential in your financial planning. The costs of long-term care are significant. Long-term care for setting the stage, what is it? Long-term care is the kind of care that isn't immediate and acute. It's not care in a hospital or going to your doctor. It's rehab. It's a nursing home. It's home health care. It's all these things that it can be a wide range of the ways we receive care. But this can have a corrosive effect on one's resources because the costs are quite substantial. We find that as we are an aging society, we are living longer. We have good medical care in many cases. We can all complain about some of the way the system works, of course, and the costs associated with it. But people are living longer generally. We had a disruption with the pandemic, but that's behind us to a large, not to say the COVID doesn't exist, but, that's not really disrupting people's length of life at this point as much. So statistically, we are living longer. And as we live longer, we have the risk of more chronic issues and the need for more assistance, whether that is cognitive impairment or physical challenges. And how we deal with those when we pay for that assistance, that's essentially what we're talking about when it comes to long-term care. Now, there are other examples outside of aging, stroke or some kind of head injury. There are things that happen that can create this need at different stages of life. And there are certain illnesses that can affect people sooner. Certainly early onset Alzheimer's, maybe ALS is an example that we think of as something that can hit people at all ages. But by and large, this is something we associate with aging. And the challenge becomes, how do we deal with it? And how do we think about this? Jeff, you look like you're about to comment on something.
It's the thing that when we do the financial planning and we get to stress testing their financial plan and looking at what ifs and all this, it's the thing that most people dismiss really quickly. It's like, so that's not going to happen to me, or we're going to take care of each other, or my child's going to move in with us, even though maybe the child hasn't been talked to yet.
Yeah. Do they know that? Yeah. Do they know they're giving up their job to help you with your care?
And it's all around us, whether you've had a elderly grandparent, a parent, whether you have a neighbor, it's not something that's invisible. And, one of the statistics that surprised me when we were reviewing Long-Term Care Month, November, was that over 70% of Americans turning 65 require some form of long-term care during their lifetime.
Isn't that astounding?
7 in 10.
Now, that could be a shorter rehab. It could be a prolonged stay in a nursing home facility.
Could be home care.
Could be assisted living. All these variables. So there's a wide range of possibilities. But when you think about that of those who are in retirement at some point, as many as 70% will have a need for assistance in this way. how do you be dismissive of that? We have all the jokes,
Right.
used to be people would throw out the phrase, we're calling Dr. Kevorkian or
Right.
something like people don't, Russ, you might not know who Dr. Kevorkian, he was the assisted suicide
Oh,
doctor.
Russ is the young guy, if people
know,
don't know in the crowd
but,
here.
but, nowadays it's like, oh, well, we've got a pillow or, some like, haha, some kind of, just a way to dismiss it
Yeah,
and
people
make
use
light of it.
humor to
And,
dismiss
or
something.
I just had someone in the office the other day who said, I just won't do that.
Right. I've heard that
Well,
too.
yeah, but no, you'd like to be in a position where you just won't have that, but we don't always have control of these, particularly if we're at a stage of life when we're frail and we may not be independent to say, nope, I'm not going to do that. You might have the will of saying, I don't want to be in a position where I need assistance. But again, as we said, there's a range of things. If you need some assistance is different from, um, that image we have of someone in a nursing home
Right. Right.
and, just not having their faculties and so on. They're just in a real sad situation. That's not always what we're talking about here.
No. No. And it has so 70%, if you're 65, 70% of those people have some type of long-term care event, and that may be handled in the ways that we're describing. Could be
Yeah.
a family member, could be a short stay. So that's a reasonably high frequency occurring,
Yeah.
and the impact to a financial plan can be significant. So it's not really something that you should ignore, because the impact could be, $500,000.
It could be, and it really depends, right?
Could be
We had a
more.
client in the other day who was paying out of pocket for care at home for his spouse who is suffering from cognitive decline, dementia, maybe Alzheimer's. And he said something more like 300 and something. Was it 350 or
I think it was
something?
$350.
He was pulling out of his pocket to pay.
Sure.
Now, he had the resources and he could. So it was money well spent. Not everyone has those kind of resources to be able to do that as the option to say, I want the comforts of home.
Right.
Well,
the two ends of the spectrum, don't have to worry about it. If you have no money, there's going to be Medicaid. And if you have a lot of money, you can pay out of pocket. It's the people, as it is usually, right? The people that are kind of in the middle.
Yeah, they have wealth, but not enough to feel like, oh, it's no worry at all.
Right.
The real worry scenario is that kind of person that has wealth, but not so much that it's easy to address out of pocket. And the first of the spouses in a married couple has the need for institutional care that could really be draining to their wealth, leaving the surviving spouse in a position where they're really compromised for their financial security. You know what I mean? That's the worry scenario. So, interestingly, it seems as though for so many people having the risk of being affected by this, it's pretty modest as to how many people have chosen to insure to help them mitigate this risk from depleting their wealth. I think it was something like 11%.
Exactly. According to our data, it's only 11% have purchased a long-term care policy.
I think, I mean, I'm sure you have more to say on that, but I think long-term care generally, long-term care insurance has a reputation now for being, extremely expensive.
Yes.
For premiums going up year after year,
right?
Which people obviously don't like.
Sure.
So I think it's kind of become one of those things that it's like, yeah, that's way too much for me. And we get that a lot when
we
clients,
do.
when clients
and I think it's important to distinguish some of that. So if I'm buying a policy today, I'm paying a much higher premium than someone who bought that same amount of coverage in 1995 or whatever it might have been, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. The premiums they charged were understated relative to the amount of claims people are living longer. People are needing this more. They didn't plan well. They didn't invest well. There was the interest rates were very low for a prolonged time. They in the 90s, before HIPAA, this wasn't a mainstream product. It was a fringe product. So all these variables factor into why it is that insurance companies didn't properly price the product. So now they're paying the price by trying to jack these prices up on existing insureds. Whereas people who buy it today, I don't think they have to worry as much that their premiums are going to go higher because they've already built in much higher costs at the outset. So it is more costly. And now there's other ways of trying to approach this as an insurance product, with life insurance or annuity hybrid products. Let's before we dig into any insurance solution, let's put some perspective on how do we treat this? How do we think about when do I insure? When should I insure at all? So as you pointed out, Jeff, if I have very modest assets, I'm going to spend through them quickly, and then I'd have availability to benefit from a welfare resource that the states provide. Medicaid is designed for people who run out of resources, and it is for health concerns, and it is this kind of circumstance where we find that bankruptcies are driven oftentimes by health events, healthcare costs. And this is one of those circumstances. People in their elder years who end up on Medicaid exhaust their resources to be eligible to be on Medicaid. Not ideal, but at least there's a resource if you do run out of resources of your own. The state is helping. Oftentimes, the question is that the best quality? Am I getting what I would have otherwise? These are, and it may not be at home in those circumstances. It might be in an
choices are limited for sure.
You have less choices. So that's another reason why insurance can be preferable, to open up some possibility of choices. But in those instances, when we have modest resources, the cost of coverage might exacerbate the problem, and it may not be a priority. So and as you said, for people who have wealth, one of the things we do when we do a financial plan is stress test to say, well, what would happen if we had a prolonged long-term care scenario? Could we withstand the costs that might be associated with that? And if the answer is generally, yeah, looks promising, you could hold your ground. You might lose some wealth, but you wouldn't go penniless, right? Or you wouldn't exhaust your wealth, and your spouse would still have resources if they survived you, that kind of thing. Then it becomes optional. Do I want to insure? Or do I want to, mitigate that risk, or pass that risk to the insurance company? If the answer is yes, fine, do insurance. You can afford it in that scenario. If the answer, and more often than not, is I don't think I want to spend that money because I don't know if I'll need it, and they're more inclined to say I'll cover it out of my own pocket. So then you've got this middle ground where it would do damage, and we find oftentimes people still are reluctant to use an insurance product as the solution to that. Though I think now we can maybe enter into that discussion, but there's some interesting product solutions to help people with that. One option is to take a chunk of money, put it into either an annuity or a life insurance product that is designed with long-term care costs in mind. And it might go a long way in mitigating those costs. And if you don't have a long-term care event, the possibility you'd get money back.
Well, that's one of the objections. Like people, we already said that people say, "I'm not going to use this. I get another solution," etc. And thinking, well, if I pay these premiums, it's just throwing money out the window because I may never use it. Like all insurance, by the way.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. That's the point of insurance, right?
but the annuity hybrid policies do add at least the option of getting income from that policy, if you will, or a death benefit if there's a life insurance piece component to it. So I think that takes away one of the objections anyway.
I will point out there is another consideration to that. In the case of an annual premium, I'm using a very modest amount of my wealth, my resources annually. It's a percentage of my returns, perhaps each year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I take a lump sum of money, I've set aside, maybe they're giving up some earning opportunity in the process because these products that do this don't give as good a rate of return, right?
Right.
But I've taken $150,000 of my resources and put it in this. I'm going to call it a sinking fund of sorts, right?
Sure.
It's allocated for this purpose. It may not be performing the way it would otherwise, right? But if I have a long-term care event, the insurance product, I've paid an annual premium. In the case of the $150,000 instance, I'm going to use my money. The insurance company is using my money in that scenario. I've given up a significant portion of wealth that before the insurance is really going to the company is really going to factor in.
Yep.
So I've got a much higher deductible, if you will, in this scenario because I've got more skin in the game, which is something we don't always think about, with that trade-off of, if I don't use it, I'll at least get my money back. Yes, but you're putting more of your money up front as the way to manage that cost, right?
Counterpoint is don't have to worry about increasing premiums because you've made the commitment, you put the money in, you know your benefit. You don't have to worry in 10 years if you're paying
It's a known
annual
quantity.
premiums that the premium's going to double or
It's a
whatever
good
people
point.
worry about.
And then the other thing that we have to be looking at is, does that scenario, some do, some don't, does it account for an inflationary issue?
Good point.
Some products don't account for that. So, maybe important that you at least try to work that into your numbers. I find a lot of times people have bought an insurance policy, but a traditional policy, but they didn't include an inflation feature, and that's diminished value over time, right?
Sure.
Costs of care are going up. We
Higher than the inflation
5% rate.
Right.
Yeah. But healthcare kind of costs, which go up high, go up faster. Anyway, so insurance is one of the possibilities. Maybe it's worth talking about what are the costs for different kinds of care, because when we talk about it nationally, the numbers are one number, but in our region, in Massachusetts,
your region,
my region, our area, it's Russ and I over here, Jeff's in Florida, where it's a little less costly than it is in Massachusetts.
It is, yeah, it is.
It's tied to the cost of living, really, and what they have to pay for wages. You can't have AI bring efficiencies to your long-term care provider, to help you out of the chair, or to move from the bed to the chair, or to feed you or make meals for you, or whatever it is, right? This is dispense medication, or whatever, all the things that can happen with some form of long-term care. It is people. It's a people care, and it is people who do that, and that's where the costs lie. So if you live in a more higher cost of living area, the costs of care are quite high. If you live in a lower cost of living part of the country, that's going to help. So if you have family in, I don't know, Mississippi or Alabama or one of those, I think those are the places where it's a little less costly for long-term care. Maybe that's where you want to receive your care. I don't know. It's a lot less out of pocket. Whereas if you are in New England or, California, Los Angeles and San Francisco, the costs of care are going to be much higher. If you're in the DC area, it's going to be costly, that kind of thing. You can kind of, get a feel for where these higher costs of living locations are, it's going to correspond. So today in our area, the cost of a nursing home on Cape Cod in the ballpark of $180,000 a year
Mhm.
for a full-time nursing home scenario. If you had cognitive care, it's more,
Right.
because there's different precautions that need to be planned for, and it's a higher level of care. So if you're in assisted living, it's less, but it's still, not inconsequential. Insurance can help with the range of care. But in any case, what about family? We find that, uh, Jeff, I don't know, would we can be considered still the sandwich generation? Um,
Well, I think so. I mean, being late 50s, early 60s, your parents are getting older. I went through this with my mom, as you
yeah,
know, um, and yes, you're the first line of defense, and everybody thinks that they can take care of their parents or their loved ones. Not everybody, but a lot of people think they're going to take them into the home and provide care. But from my experience, that can work for a short time, depending on the ability, the cognitive ability, the physical ability.
yeah,
But as someone ages and they lose their ability to be mobile or to make good decisions on their own,
yeah,
it's really not the best decision to take care of somebody in the home, especially if is the home adequate in first floor living and
right.
all these things.
Infrastructure of it all.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
caregiver fatigue is something that
It's
is
really a big part of it, right? It's
and
just,
yeah, and
it's
people
one
don't think.
person, you know, a child, a spouse, whoever
Mhm,
is that caregiver.
yeah,
It really is hard for them to do it on their own, and oftentimes physically, if you can kind of have the visual of the frail older woman trying to
mhm,
take care of the, much taller, heavier husband,
yeah.
how's
Well,
that work?
we've had that, and
Yeah,
with a 5'2" woman weighing 100 pounds with a 250-pound husband, and her looking at us and saying, "I'm going to be able to take care of him."
yeah, yeah, and I mean, to a point, but it's
It's
one
well
thing when
intended for
it's,
sure.
I think it's one thing when it's like, oh, my fingers aren't as nimble as they used to be.
Yep,
Need a little help with the buttons, or some
sure.
of the things that are the activities of daily living. But and
When you
those
get it
typically, just to review, that's the things you do when you wake up. You
right.
get out of bed, transferring, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so mobility, you're able to, move around. You go to the bathroom, you
Hmm.
take a shower, you
Right.
dress, you have your
Right.
breakfast. So these various kinds of things that are the activities of daily living, if you're not fully able to handle them yourselves, these are when people typically look to long-term care to assist.
Right.
And it can be for cognitive or physical, right? So that drive these issues. So in any case, it's one thing to start with a little bit of help, and it's a team effort, and then as things progress, it may be not as viable to be
Hmm.
that caregiver, and oftentimes it's not uncommon for the caregiver to get sick
Oh,
from
does that?
being so attentive
Sure.
and concerned and caring, but stressed that they end up having their own health events.
Hmm.
And then you've got two people with challenges. So you
Yep.
don't want to leave things to a point where you're in that strained scenario. We
That's
just had
right.
a conversation about this, the idea of being the sole caregiver with a client this week, and saying, you don't want it it's easy for it to become a strain for the person who's doing that caregiving. You need to bring in some help before you get
Oh, you need it.
yeah, before you get to a point where you're so drained.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So what else should we cover in this topic, Jeff?
I think we should jump back to the stress testing and the financial plan and discuss a little bit of the details of that and what comes out of that process.
Russ, you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, well, as the guys are saying, it's usually the biggest, drain of wealth later in life when we model the long-term care scenario into a plan. We usually start with a 3-year projection for long-term care, and when we say that that compounds at 5% in increasing costs year after year, when we're looking at it towards the end of someone's plan in their 90s, it could be 20 years, 30 years down the road, that amounts to a large expenditure year to year. So when people see how it looks on the plan and they see that drop off towards the end of the plan, it's a shock. It's a surprise. And even if people are looking to self-insure and they see the dramatic impact, um, oftentimes they'll go, oh, well, I don't think I'm going to need that. I'm not going to live that long, as you guys are saying. But the reality is that is a potential reality, and it's something you need to plan for.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I know that like one of the things that Chris often points out is there are certain things you can do, for example, in Massachusetts to leverage, your own home equity, for example. That's another thing
Mhm.
people will look to if they can't cover the expense out of pocket or from their investments. They'll look to the home that they've usually have built up a lot of equity in
Yeah,
by
and,
that point.
and possibly there's ways to have a very modest insurance policy that can help to insulate the equity in the home for the
Hmm.
surviving spouse, that it might still be available to them to draw from in some form or fashion if everything else got spent through, you know.
Maybe you have some things to add, but the other thing that often comes up that people do is they look to estate planning
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
as a
Definitely.
I
solution.
think that's the right direction to like wind this down. I
Yeah.
think we got to talk about that a little bit. So estate planning issues, number one, there's really two divergent directions to go when thinking about an estate plan. There's one where you are intending to try to protect assets from the spend down process and essentially give them away, whether to a trust or to family members, in the form of 5 years prior to the expense happening. That's hard to plan that way, but that's a direction. So maybe
Well,
people use an
clock's
early
ticking.
trust. Most people we talk to have resources where they want to continue to control their wealth. They don't want to lock it
Mhm.
up in a way that they don't have access to it. And so we generally find they tend to be driven, like gravitating toward more of a living trust or revocable trust approach to their outlook. And if they came down with some kind of um, a diagnosis or prognosis where it seemed very likely that they'd have a long-term care event, they may revisit how their strategy would work. And maybe they wouldn't be able to protect it all, but they might be consider protecting some. In most cases, these families want access. They want control. They want to, even if it means using some of it for their care,
Mhm.
they want that decision-making ability and not to be purely dependent on the goodness of the state to help
Mhm.
determine what they can and can't do and the quality of the care they might have. So things to think about. You should have some basic estate planning documents. I speak generally that
Mhm.
everyone's circumstances are different, but things to consider: a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a living will, because healthcare proxies work in some jurisdictions. Living will might be in a different jurisdiction. You may want, in addition to a will, a trust.
Mhm.
And these types of trusts may be decisions you navigate with your estate planner, but certainly involve your financial planning, as we can help you think through the pros and cons of some of these decisions, given your size of wealth and circumstances and family dynamics and so forth. What didn't I cover, Jeff, when it came to the estate planning thing? Oh, I know. Family conversations.
Well, that's where I was
I
going.
knew that was where you were going.
Have these conversations this weekend, meaning just have them long before you need it. Don't assume that certain people are going to be available to provide care. Don't assume that you're not going to need some type of long-term care, have these conversations with your family, with your financial planner and your estate planner. And there are many things you can do. We're just scratching the surface, and it's very individualized based on your circumstance, your wealth, the real estate that you own, just some of the things we touched on. And make a plan for the what ifs, because 70% of the people who turn
That's big.
65 are going to need to at least deal with this issue at different levels, of course.
Yeah.
But don't just ignore it and think it can't
Yeah.
happen to you, because take it from us, we see a lot of people and it does happen to you. It does happen to us.
Yeah.
So be prepared, make a plan, and be ready long before you need it, not in
Well said.
crisis.
Well said. And you mentioned this weekend. Let's take a moment to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. This will be
Yeah.
our episode prior to Thanksgiving. So thanks for being with us so often. We appreciate you as a
Too.
listener, and we certainly are thankful for the clients who place their trust in our services.
Mhm.
But in any event, we all have so many blessings. We need to focus on those blessings. It's nice that we have this day annually to take the time to do that. So, in any event, we wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for being with us this week. Until next time, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's for financial planning or portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at somethingmorewithchrisboyd.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901. Or send us your questions to amr-info@wealthenhancement.com. You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd Financial Talk Show. Wealth Enhancement Advisory Services and J. Christopher Boyd provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. Wealth Enhancement Group cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.